Hi everyone. On behalf of Canada Post, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking about how to combine physical and digital media to increase campaign ROI, but not in the traditional sense of using multiple media to deliver a consistent message to your audience, but rather how to create media synergies that tie everything together in a sequence or process. I'll show you how you can increase campaign impact overall and show you examples of how others are integrating physical and digital media in meaningful ways to increase the effectiveness and the ROI of everything they do. So let's begin. But let's start with a well-known historic figure who some of you may recognize. This fine gentleman was a very popular fellow back in the 18th century in Europe. He was an author, an explorer, an adventurer, and his reputation lives on today. He is, of course, Giacomo Casanova, and Casanova is widely held as the greatest lover of all times, since over the course of his lifetime, he is reputed to have seduced close to 200 women. So, in my mind, Casanova is the embodiment, the very essence of advertising, which is, as you know, all about seduction. As you know, the purpose of advertising is to create an image, a reputation that's considered desirable, and to attract a following around the brand. The very fact that the name Casanova is synonymous even today with seduction says a lot about the true power of this man's personal brand. Now let's take a look at another historic figure. This gentleman, as you can probably guess, was extremely well known in the 13th century in Asia. Those of you who recall your history lessons will immediately recognize the Emperor of Mongolia, Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan. Now, we all know that Genghis Khan ruthlessly pillaged and conquered most of Asia and parts of Europe during his reign. However, unlike his grandfather, Kublai Khan was perhaps more of a lover than a warrior. In fact, at the peak of his lifetime, Kublai Khan had no less than 4 empresses and 7,000 concubines. Now, for me, Kublai Khan is perhaps the embodiment of relationship marketing because although seduction may have played a role up to a point, Kublai Khan was truly all about retention. Now, in reality, when compared with Casanova and his 200 conquests, Kublai Khan was by far a greater lover. Now, what does all this have to do with combining physical and digital media? Well, it's really a matter of perspective. The traditional mass marketing perspective looks at the brand building process a little like a funnel, where a campaign is designed to create a lot of awareness, filling the top of the funnel. And some of the consumers they reach will engage with the brand, and then some of them will eventually buy the product. And that's really where it ends. Like Casanova, we love them and leave them and move on to the next product or brand and start all over again, because what excites us, what interests us, essentially is the thrill of the chase, the seduction as an end rather than a means to an end. Now let's look at the process from a relationship marketing perspective. Our objective is to build a sustainable ongoing relationship with as many high-valued customers as possible and to retain them for as long as possible. So our process doesn't look as much like a funnel, but more like an hourglass, where at the top we go through the same steps of attracting customers and converting them, but once the first sale is made, that's when the action begins instead of ending. The impact of the first half of the process is then amplified in the bottom half of the hourglass by growing the value of the relationship and maximizing retention of your high-valued customers. And the more customers that we can convert in the top half of the hourglass, the greater the total amplification will be at the bottom. To quote Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, rule number 2 is begin with the end in mind. Of course, we all know that rule number 1 is be proactive, and relationship marketing is very proactive. With the goal of growing relationships in mind when we start, we make the right choices at the beginning of the process to make sure that what we have left at the end is greater than what we started with. So my point is that relationship marketing, contrary to mass marketing, is more of an ongoing process than a discrete event. Our goal is to move the customer from awareness to action and then to amplify their value once they're engaged in the relationship. And of course, we want to retain them as long as possible. Now, we're all familiar with the tools of branding and awareness building, but what about the tools of relationship building? And which tools are the most effective depending on what our objective is? This chart represents the results of the DMA, or Direct Marketing Association, 2012 benchmark study of media response rates. It's the compilation of millions of data points for both physical and digital media. And this first chart represents the average response rates for various media used for customer acquisition. I've taken out a few of the results in the interest of clarity, including telemarketing, because over 50% of Canadian households are now on the do not call list. What you see clearly on the left-hand side of the screen is that direct mail, yes, direct mail, provides the highest response rate when compared to digital media such as email, display ads, and paid search. The three bars on the left-hand side represent the average response rate for various formats of direct mail, the first being standard letter size, the second is oversize, and the last is for postcard format. It's interesting to note that from an impact perspective, size does matter, and so does format. Postcards don't work nearly as well as standard envelope packages, and oversize typically provides a healthy lift in response, particularly when it's a dimensional piece. Now, just to make it clear, these are actual numbers of purchases, not opens or clicks. So if you're used to seeing an average open rate of 20 to 30% or a 5 to 7% click rate, 3 per 1,000 seems quite low. But when you consider the actual number of people who buy once they've reached the website and opened a shopping cart and gone through the process, the numbers start to make a lot of sense. So for direct mail used for customer acquisition, the study shows an average response rate of 1.2%, and for email it's 0.3%, or 3 per 1,000. This next chart shows you the average response rates for campaigns directed to existing customers. Again, we find the same kind of results, with direct mail coming out way ahead. And obviously there are no results for display and search because these are essentially customer acquisition tools. So for campaigns to existing customers, you're now looking at an average response rate of 3.4% for mail and 0.12% response rate for email. So let's put these numbers in perspective. Think of the customer base of a small or medium-sized business. Let's say you have 100,000 customers in your database. Now, when you start to do the math, you see that the trend becomes quite clear. A DM campaign, which would produce an average of 3.4% response, would give you 3,400 orders, while an email campaign to the same audience would produce only 120 orders. So you would need a lot of frequency to compensate for the difference in response. You can't really increase the volume because it's your customer base, and that there's a limit to the number of people in your database that are active customers. There's also a limit to how often you can go back to those same customers with the same message and the same offer and the same product. So you see the impact of choosing the lower cost medium, which is email, over the higher cost but more effective medium of direct mail. Now, of course, these average results are not for the spray and pray mass mailings and the batch and blast spam bombing. We're not talking about junk here. We're talking about intriguing, engaging, targeted messages that are welcomed by consumers, and most important of all, are acted upon by those customers. Now, that's not to say that seduction is not important, and direct mail, contrary to popular belief, does not have to be boring. So let me quickly show you some examples of interesting direct mail from around the world, and maybe we'll find some inspiration in there. You'll see how these campaigns allow you to engage not just one or two, but in fact 4 or even all 5 senses. They also have one critical element that ties them all together, and that's an involvement device of some kind that gets the customer engaged with the message and starts interacting with the piece. This first piece is from Canada, and it's for Attitude Giorgio Armani fragrance for men. It contains a flat spray sample of actual perfume that you can actually wear. The visuals, the texture, the sound of the spray, and of course the fragrance itself combine to create a globally sensual experience. This second piece is a recipe book mailer from a publishing company in Germany. The message is imprinted directly on sheets of pasta that are bound together to form a recipe book. When you combine the pasta with sauce and cheese, it actually turns into a baked lasagna. It's a great example of edible mail. This next mailer is from India, and it's from an insurance company selling life insurance to newlyweds. It's designed to look like a wedding invitation and contains a sound chip that plays traditional Vedic mantras that would allow the newlyweds to relive memories of their wedding day. Interaction and involvement is critically important to the success of a direct mail piece, particularly when it helps to drive home the benefit of the product, as is the case with this weight loss campaign. To open the mailer, you have to tear off the die-cut love handle on the right-hand side. This next mailer is by an agency that wanted to communicate their unique ability to make brands stick in the minds of consumers. The piece was made of adhesive paper that literally stuck to the hands of the reader. Great tactile involvement. This ECHO Award-winning campaign for gene therapy research invited potential donors to wear jeans to work to raise money, and provided a sewing kit to embroider their support directly on the jeans. The letter was stitched directly into a sheet of denim, and the involvement device, that sewing kit, had great impact on participation. To illustrate the precision of its high-quality scissors, Fiskar sent out a letter with the copy die-cut directly out of the sheet. Great results and an award-winning package. This next piece is from Vancouver. It's from the recording studio GGRP. And as you know, all things vintage are really popular these days, including vinyl records. So this recording studio sent out a direct mail package that transformed into a record player, allowing you to play the vinyl recording simply by turning the record with a pencil. Very interesting and creative piece, demonstrating their ability in sound engineering. Now, today we all recognize the power and impact of video, and there are all kinds of ways of linking a direct mail piece to video, whether it's through the use of a QR code or a web key or a personalized URL or Perl. But it's also possible to integrate a miniature LCD screen directly into a direct mail piece that would include video footage, several minutes of video and audio, and this particular piece was created by Accenture and sent to Canada Post to celebrate their 20 years of working together. Tremendous impact with the power of video built right in. So as you can see, direct mail is far from dead, as made amply clear by this beautiful piece from Adobe. Print and direct mail is very much alive today. As a matter of fact, the mailbox is still a very powerful place to influence consumers and call them to action. According to the latest direct mail omnibus research conducted by Canada Post, during the last 6 months, 39% of Canadians were influenced to buy online by something they received in their mailbox. An amazing 61% were influenced to buy something at retail. And if you're still not convinced of the value of mail, perhaps the very fact that Google is using direct mail in an aggressive way to promote its AdWords services will. As a matter of fact, even social media giant Facebook is using direct mail. Interestingly enough, part of the success of direct mail is how it makes consumers feel. And that feeling is valued. Receiving a personalized direct mail piece from a brand consumers know and respect makes them feel valued by the brand. It shows them that the brand has taken the time to address them personally and provide them with valuable information. Again, quoting from the omnibus research, 45% of Canadians say that receiving something in the mail makes them feel valued. This is the highest of all media, higher than email, higher than the web and social media, and higher than even a phone call. This in turn has an impact on brand perception, including brand trustworthiness and brand loyalty. In this post-campaign analysis study conducted by ICOM, consumers who received a direct mail package from a well-known global packaged goods brand showed a 12-point increase in perceived trustworthiness. This same study found a 16-point increase in the likelihood of recommending the brand to a friend, which is considered a proxy for brand loyalty. But this presentation is not just about mail. It's about making media combinations that include physical mail with digital media, the main one being email, which leads us to the concept of media